Hey there, I'm Gabby and I'm a wet and wet oil painter, and today I'm going to do something totally different. I usually do landscapes. Recently I did a project where I did sort of this abstract sort of peacock thing, so I'm going to show you what it looks like. I just have a picture of it on my phone, so I'll show you. So that's what it looked like. And so I did it sort of rainbow color. Now I'm going to do essentially the same project today, but I'm just going to do it with some different colors. And the reason is because I have tried to do this tutorial. I did the picture once, plus I tried to do two tutorials, and I screwed up both of them. So recording-wise, I screwed them up. And so I'm going to do another one, but I'm going to do it different colors because I don't want 4 of the same picture. So let me tell you what I've done up here first. The canvas is painted with black gesso. And then after it dried, I took a ruler and I divided it into 4 pieces and then again into another 4. So it was cut like a pizza. And then on each one of these lines, I put color. Now when I did the rainbow colors, I did yellow down here, up to orange, up to red, up to purple, up to blue, up to green, back to yellow. And then I did it in a circle. And that's really the only difference that I did with that one. And this one, I actually used a pencil with a string, like a, I don't know, what do you call those things? I don't remember what it's called. Anyways, where I pulled it and I did a circle so that my feathers are sort of lined up on here. The other one I didn't do that way. And that's because I didn't want it to look perfect, and this isn't going to look perfect either. So I just wanted to sort of preface that. So let me tell you what I did with this one if you'd like to follow along. I used ultramarine blue. I used this teal that I have. It's made by M. Graham. It's actually turquoise, sorry, and it's a transparent turquoise color. And you can make turquoise with just putting phthalo blue and phthalo green together as well. And then, so the ultramarine, the turquoise, phthalo green. So the ultramarine blue is in here. It's here by the feathers. And then it's here right on the outside of the green. And then the turquoise is sort of in between all of that. And then on the very edges. And then the phthalo green sort of goes around the feathers and then in a circle. And then I use Indian yellow for the spots for the feathers. So that's what I have on my canvas currently. And then from there I'm going to paint my peacock. So we're going to get started right away. And what I have is, so I have this all painted and it's wet. I just put that paint on the canvas. What I'm going to start with is this little fan brush, okay? And it is a hog hair fan brush, and so it's really scratchy, and I want that on purpose. And so if you want some texture, that would be the way to go. Something that has, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a fan brush. I just wanted something that would sort of be splayed. So I'm going to take my white. Now the white I'm using is a little bit of a softer white, so if your white is really, really thick, I would suggest you add either a little bit of linseed oil or a little bit of paint thinner, or maybe both to it. And I will be using some paint thinner as I go through this. And the paint thinner that I use is called Gamsol. I also have paper towels, and I'm going to be wiping my brush a lot. So if you want to get started, here we go. And I lied because that's not the first brush we're going to use. I have to try to remember how I did this. Okay, so the first brush that I'm going to use is going to be a flat brush, okay? It's just a very small, simple flat brush. You can use any flat brush to do this. So the inspiration to this was actually a picture of this like flower thing that I saw. So this was originally going to be a flower, and that'll make sense as I show you this process. Okay, so that's sort of the first part. And then I wiped my brush. And if you want this white to stand out more, what you're going to do is you're going to wipe your brush every single time. If you are doing this rainbow colored, you have to wipe your brush every single stroke you do. So you'll do like one stroke here, and then the exact opposite stroke, and then wipe your brush. And I'm not washing my brush, I'm just wiping it off. Especially if your white is a little bit thinner, that should work just fine. So that's sort of the center of it. And then I'm going to take my flat brush again that I have wiped off, and I'm going to put lines inside the sort of petals. Now I'm going to bring you guys a little bit closer so you can see sort of the detail work, and then once I back out, then I'll back out again. So hold on. Okay, now I have you guys closer. Now I'm going to use that fan brush, okay, and I have white on it, but it's not a ton of white. Keep in mind though, it is a little bit thinner. And then I'm going to make these sort of shapes where I start here and then I brush up, 2, 3, and I do 3 of them, okay? 1, 2, 3. And again, if you do the rainbow colored ones, you have to wipe your brush between basically every sort of petal that you do. And if you decide you want that white to stand out more, the way to do that is first make sure that your paint is thin enough, and then second, make sure that you're wiping your brush a lot. Now really the point of this is just to sort of create some texture. So definitely, you know, have some creative liberty with this. Do what you want with it, play around with it. It doesn't have to be anything perfect. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the way I do it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sort of extend this flower thing that I have, and we're going to sort of turn it into feathers. So I'm going to make those same sort of swoops that I was making before. And I'm wiping my brush again. Basically, between every one of the feathers, I'm wiping my brush off. The unfortunate thing, as I film this, that I'm seeing is that this picture, the color is actually really, really cool, but it's not really translating over, I don't think, to you guys so much, because it's like, it's a really pretty sort of blue, and then it's going to teal, and then the green, so. Okay, so now I sort of outlined those feathers. I'm going to take a liner brush. A liner brush looks like that, okay? I'm going to take that liner brush, get it wet with paint thinner, and then I'm going to add that to the white on my palette, and then roll my brush back and forth, like this, right? And I want that paint to be the consistency of India ink. So not water, not paint, a really nice, smooth in-between. You'll know if it's too thin, if it runs down your canvas. You'll know if it's too thick, if it doesn't come off the brush. That's pretty much what you need to know about that. So sort of in those feathers, I'm making that same sort of swooping motion, and I'm almost doing it like it's braiding. And again, you can do this however you want. Just to have kind of whatever textures you want to have, the more abstract you want it to look. You know, if you want to do, instead of curves, you could do like really straight, sharp lines. It's really up to you what you want to do with it. This was sort of one of those projects that I just did for the fun of it, just to sort of play around with the concept of a little bit more abstract stuff, and I just kind of let my imagination run with me. And so that's what I suggest that you try to do. If you want to do it just the same way I did, that's fine too. But I would say have a little bit of fun with it. Okay, I'm going to take that fan brush that I had, and I'm going to wash it. it's getting really dirty. And then I dried it off, but not too much because I want this paint to be thin as I do this. So I'm going to get about the same amount of paint on my brush as I had before. Okay. It's not a lot. Okay. And then I am going to go in the middle. And I'm just going to make these sweeping motions out. Nothing too particular. Altogether, the time that it has taken me to paint this picture is probably going to be close to an hour, and that includes, you know, the prep of the black canvas in the background, and it really depends, like, if you do this, first of all, how fast you do it, but also just how much detail you decide to sort of put into it. All right, so I'm going to back you guys up so that you can sort of see the whole thing. And I'm going to sort of have some more fun with my liner brush. So I'm going to thin out that paint again. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to start here, I think. And I'm going to make these little twists. And this just gives me a chance to sort of accentuate the yellow, because otherwise we wouldn't really be seeing that yellow. It really hides in there. Indian yellow is really the only transparent yellow I have found. I have another thing that's called yellow oxide or something like that, but it ends up looking a lot more brown than it does yellow. So if you're sort of looking for a transparent yellow, Indian yellow is the paint to go with. When I first started painting and I had Indian yellow and yellow ochre, I was like, oh, there is no difference. What is the difference? I don't get it. And then I sort of got an education in it, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a big difference, because that yellow ochre is very, very dense. It's a very opaque color. Yellow ochre is almost like Indian yellow, but with a white base instead of like a clear base to it. Did I screw that up? I did. Guess we'll have to figure out how to fix that. Happy accidents, right? So the point of this is not to look like a peacock in sort of its natural sense. It's more to look like abstract art that your mind kind of brings you to a peacock. Now the peacock that I actually have in here will be sort of deliberate. When I first started doing this, I was like, I'm going to make this look like peacock feathers, but not like an actual peacock, and then it ended up having to look like a peacock anyway. So I guess it happens. Okay. So I think in here where I have these, I'm going to do little sort of darker deliberate marks with my white brush, with my liner brush, to give it sort of this more feather feeling. And when I'm doing this, I'm sort of pushing down, and then as I come to the end of my line, I'm flicking my brush off. And that's what gives it sort of this sharper sort of disappearing end versus like here where it's a really blunt start. So if you guys are ever looking for that sort of effect, that's how you do that. If you guys happen to hear any snoring in the background, it's my dog. He likes to snore. Sometimes I think he's not even sleeping. I think he just fakes it. Because he doesn't always snore, just sometimes. So there, so far, that is my peacock. Now in the other picture, as well as in this picture, I have silver. So I'm going to find my silver and put some on my, oh, it's right here. I thought I was going to have to dig for it. I got my silver. The silver that I'm using is made by Winsor Newton. And if you've never used like an iridescent oil paint before, it's a lot of fun. So it's definitely something to consider playing around with. I'm going to use a chip brush. This is like a 1-inch chip brush. You can get smaller chip brushes. You could use a normal 2-inch brush for this. It doesn't have to be a chip brush. I'm going to put a little bit of thinner onto that brush because I want to thin down this silver. And I am going to take my brush and just on the edges, I'm going to be hitting it with some of that silver. Sometime I will introduce you guys to my dog. But it always seems like he comes down here and is sleeping when he's down here, so. He comes down here and he sits on my lap for about 30 seconds and then he goes and lays in his bed. And he's got a special little bed right in my studio just for him. Because he is spoiled. Okay, so I'm just doing a little bit of silver, like I said, on the edges. And then once I've kind of laid that down, I'm just going to brush it in. Because I want to sort of fade out the edges. And just like that. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to draw our peacock. So we're going to take our liner brush and I have some more dark blue. I actually just grabbed some Prussian blue, but I guess whatever. And you can do your peacock in any color that you want. I'm going to do it dark so that it really stands out. And to draw out this outline, I'm using a really thin down paint because I'm going to use my liner brush. You could do this with really any brush, but that happens to be what I'm going to use to do mine. So I'm going to start down here. I'm going to give it sort of a bulbous body. And this is going to be the front, so I'm going to have the chest sort of sit out a little bit further. And when I first did this, I looked up like outlines of peacocks just to get my brain in the right place for sort of the shape of a peacock. And I know that's probably really difficult to see, but in that menagerie here, I have the outline of a peacock. And all I'm doing is basically the body, you know, the neck and the head. I'm not doing legs or anything like that. Because again, this is supposed to sort of be, I can't talk today, it's supposed to sort of be, you know, abstract-ish. It's not supposed to look like a real peacock. All right, so I'm going to take my palette knife now, because I really want to cover up the stuff behind the bird. And the one thing that I'm going to add to this, and this works really well if your paint is transparent that you're using. So what I'm adding to this color that I'm making is I'm adding some of that silver. In my other one, I sort of coated the silver on top, but I'm going to do it this time where I take that silver and I put it into the blue right away. That way it's sort of a shimmery, like all the color is shimmery versus trying to sort of put it on top of it. Okay, so I have a big roll of paint on my knife, okay? And I'm going to start and I'm going to sort of follow along the body. Something that you could do too when you do this is you could come back through and you could sort of scrape out some of this white that's already in here. If you want to make sure that you get more color on, you know, like darker color on your peacock without sort of washing it out, you could come through and scrape that stuff. Sort of makes the inside of that little flower thing that we made kind of pointless, but it sort of also gave us a base to work from. So, and I always like to think of like peacocks as sort of being a little bit shy, and so that's why I have the head coming down so far. Okay. Grab that blue. And anytime you're doing knife work, it does take more paint. And it also takes more time to dry, so that's something to think about. You don't have to do this part with a knife. You could do this with a brush. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that I could really see the peacock itself, so that's why I'm doing it with a knife, but you do it however you want to do it. So there's the peacock body. And then I'm going to take that same chip brush that I was using before, and I'm going to tap. And just sort of blend it in to the feathers that are there. Grab a little bit of white. And I'm going to draw an eye. Here again, if you don't want to have an eye on your peacock, you don't have to. Oh. And I apologize in advance if I sort of get in the way as I do this. If you've never heard of a maul stick is something that you can rest on the side of your canvas to give you stability when you're doing little detail work. And I have yet to get one, so I just use a paintbrush. And then I actually gently set it onto my picture. And we're going to take that peacock eye. And the top of it is round, and then sort of the bottom of it is pointy. So if you do an eye on your peacock, I would really suggest that you do it that way. I have tried it a couple different ways, doing all the rainbow colored pictures that I did. And the one that really turned out the best was actually my first one. And a lot of it was because of the eye. Okay, so now I have the outline of an eye, and you can leave it at that if you want. I'm gonna put a little dot in there so I actually have an eye. And then the last thing that I had on my other peacock was sort of the little feathery things that come off the head of the peacock. To do this, I'm going to use a liner brush, and I have just a tiny bit of black. And definitely make sure that this paint is really, really, really thin down, because otherwise you're going to end up losing the feathers in the top of your bird's head. Okay. So, we're going to have a place that they all start from, and it's going to be right there. And I think I'll have like 4 of these. One thing I would avoid is making them too curly, because it'll end up looking like it has curly hair. And again, I know that's really difficult to see, but hopefully you guys can see how they came out. This one ended up kind of fading out. There we go. All right, guys, there's my peacock. Any questions or comments, you guys can put them in the comment section of the video, and I will happily address them. I hope you guys take a chance to do this, and then tell me in the comments how it goes if you do it. I'm in a group on Facebook. It's called Bob Ross for Beginners, and that's where I post some of the stuff. So if you are part of that, then find me on there. And I guess that's all I have to say about that, because I would really love to see if anybody else does this. So anyways, guys, until next time, I am Gabby. Please like, share, subscribe, and I really do hope that you fall in love with oil painting just as much as I have. Bye now.